bantamweight champion and former UFC fighter. So Jose Shorty Torres, the current Brave bantamweight champion and former UFC fighter. So first thing I wanted to mention was your amateur career stands out because how extensive and long it was and how successful. Do you think the long career in amateurs helped you prepare for the pros?
Yeah, for sure. My coach, Master Bob Shermer, who's still my coach today, when I first started, all the way up until now, he used to tell me, he goes, "Hey, you're not going pro until you have 20 amateur fights. I don't care if you're 10 and 10, 20 and 0, 0 and 20. Having 20 amateur fights helps you get ready for possibly almost everything that can happen inside that pro cage." And if you only go 5 and 0, which most people in my generation would go 5 and 0 in Chicago and then start traveling to different states or even go overseas, now they're facing other big fish in different ponds, and they slowly start to find out they're not as big as what they thought. So having 20 fights kind of got you ready for every different style of opponent, or hopefully did it for me, especially competing for the IMMAFs, fighting other national champs, pro level guys, the amateur ranks. I'm like, man, I think I'm ready for everything. And especially with the IMMAFs, you don't know who you're fighting until you win. And then the next day, you're fighting a guy from Ireland, you're fighting a guy from Romania, you're fighting a guy from whomever, and you don't know their style because, at least back in my era, we didn't really have much film on there. It was hopefully somebody had at least one little clip. And, so you had to be ready for everything. So I think for me, being 25 and 1, 26 amateur fights definitely got me ready as a pro.
Yeah, because the IMMAF, winning that twice is kind of unheard of, let alone winning it once. So it just shows that you are like above a lot of people already. Um,
Um, you know, I was just listening to my coach, and so for me,
mhm.
being a two-time I'm a champ, is huge. But you look at it now, I ended up being the pioneer because now you have other two-time world champs like Mohamed Mokaev, and now you have a three-time world champ with Ramazan, part of Cage MMA in Bahrain. So it's people are trying to do more than what I did, and it's like that is amazing. You look at the level of the guys that are competing now at, again, the same age, if not younger, than what I did. It's like these guys are going to have phenomenal careers, whether it's in UFC, Brave, Bellator, PFL, or whatever promotion they sign up for.
Yeah, and when you did turn pro, only in your third fight you already were in championship rounds. How kind of strange is that to be in championship rounds so quickly in your career?
It was crazy because, amateur, for people who don't know, it's usually 3 3-minute rounds. So it's only 9 minutes of fighting. It passes by very, very fast. But then you turn pro, or at least even in practice, do 1 5-minute round, you're like, okay, this is a little different. Okay, this is exhausting. But my first fight, I won, I think, a little over a minute. So like, man, I didn't really get that full experience. My second fight, I went the full 3 5-minute rounds. I was like, wow, I went the full 15, and I feel great. Then when I got the championship fight and I dropped down a weight class to fight for the belt and win it, the pace was higher, the opponent was faster, smaller weight class, and now I'm doing 5-minute rounds, and it was 5 minutes. I didn't get to experience my first 25-minute fight until I believe my fifth fight in Titan FC, and that was against the 135-pound champ or the 61 kg champion bantamweight. I bumped up to fight him as champion versus champion, and I went the first 25 minutes, and that, man, because it was so high pace and just a grueling fight with both of us getting injured in the fight, to be able to say I did that and felt great after is awesome, but it's definitely exhausting. As my last fight, I did 25 minutes in Bogota, Colombia, and that is, I believe, 11,200 kilometers high. So it's like a 2 mile high city, and it was definitely something I had to train for, and I'm happy to say that I was able to not just push through, but win the belt with it.
So obviously you became a two-time champion in Titan FC. How important was it for you to become a two-time champion? Because nowadays some people get like just one belt, and the second they get the belt in the regional scene, they move on to like UFC. But how much would it mean to you to get both belts?
Well, for me, it was a little different. I won my first belt at 3-0, and
Mm-hmm.
no promotion, Bellator or UFC were really interested in a young kid with only 3 fights. Yeah, I had an extensive amateur career, but notably, it doesn't help. People, especially now, only look at that pro career. So they're like, hey, we want you to get more experience. Then I defended the belt. No, we want you to get more experience. All right, well, let me do something that will shock your mind. Because more experience to you probably means 10 fights. That's a lot of fights. Even though I'm young, promotions might not want to put me on the card that fast. So
Mhm.
I wanted to fight, guys with really big resumes that I was technically supposed to lose against. I bumped up, won that belt, defended it. I bumped back down, and I was like, what else do I have to do? I was gonna bump up to 66 kg to featherweight and fight the next champion, but he said no. And then luckily, the UFC called at that time anyway. So it's like, all right, cool, finally. But when I got signed, I also got signed to a dying weight class where here in the States, being a small guy under 61 kg wasn't really popular. Demetrius Johnson got traded. So didn't really matter what my resume was. Yes, it was extensive and yes, it helped. But because of my weight class, it didn't help me. But that's also another reason why I bumped up to bantamweight because it's like, hey, man, I can go against the big guys. I can compete against some of the best, and I am one of the best, and I'm proving that now.
Yeah, so obviously you say when you did join the UFC, it wasn't popular to be a flyweight, and you sadly found that out the hard way that you were released in that batch of fighters that was told the division was shutting down. So how was it dealing with that release?
Oh, it sucked. When you grow up your whole life, getting ready for something like the UFC, because at the time UFC was the main big promotion. Bellator was, slowly growing to where it is now. PFL wasn't around, Brave wasn't around, Ryzen, all these other promotions weren't around. So UFC was the biggest thing in the US. And for me, it's like I get signed, I get mistreated beforehand because there was a lot of last minute calls, kind of unfair treatment, and then get in there and kind of was given ultimatums and this and that. And there was just a lot of things behind the scenes. And I'm like, wow, this is a lot darker than what I expected. I expected you get to the UFC, especially on my resume, you're going to be treated well, this, that. And it wasn't the case. And going there, I win a fight, and then was told I was going to fight again very, very soon after being told something very different. It's like, all right, I fight, I lose. It is what it is. Sadly, that stuff happens in the sport. I finally lose after, I believe, 8 years of being undefeated, 33 fight winning streak from amateur to pro. And then I start kind of releasing statements about the backlash, the behind the scenes stuff, and the UFC didn't like it. And when I kind of assumed that they were going to start cutting the flyweight division, I called them out on it, and I ended up being right. And sadly, because of that, they had, I guess, in a sense, every right to release me. Once you lose a fight, they can technically cut you, even if I had a 4-fight contract. And so I lost the fight. They cut me, and I kind of started that UFC flyweight demise, and they cut Jared Brooks, Justice Scoggins, and
Mhm.
all these other people on that list. But you look at us now, myself being the Brave Bantamweight champion, you look at Jared Brooks now being the Bantamweight 1FC champion. You look at John Lineker, who was released as well. He's now, I believe, fighting for the 1FC Bantamweight championship. So we're all doing really, really big things, and it's a notable thing for us as fighters to go, hey, you might have cut us, and you did a very bad mistake because now we're being treated better from these other promotions, getting paid better, and we're doing a lot more with winning belts too. So it shows how good we really are.
Yeah, and so obviously when you did start the press about the 125 division going away, what was it like when you found out like they were like not even scrapping division, but essentially the division became bigger than before? How was that dealing with that? You were like kind of caught because of it was not popular now, it's more than ever.
I mean, it was a really good promotional stunt by them because you got to think about it. When something is being canceled, everyone naturally is like, "Oh no, we feel bad. Now we're
Hmm.
gonna watch it. We're gonna do this and do that." And slowly, people were still being cut. It saved the UFC a lot of money, but now it's bringing in a lot of money because people are being watched. But then you looked at it. There was there was a time where I believe there was only 15 people in the flyweight division. Every person in that division, no matter who you were ranked. Didn't matter how bad you were, didn't matter if you're 0-4. If you were still in the UFC, you were ranked. So you were ranked top 15 in the world because UFC is looked at as the biggest and best promotion in the world, at least at the
Hmm.
time. And it's like, so it didn't matter if you lost 3 straight fights, you're ranked probably number 14 in the world. Okay, sure. And then you look at a lot of the guys that are at the top of the list now, Brandon Moreno, Pantoja, all these guys, before everyone was cut, I don't believe they were ranked. If not, they weren't ranked top 10. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, but then you cut a lot of these guys. You look at man, Dustin Ortiz. Dustin Ortiz lost to Joseph Benavidez. If he would have won that fight, he would have fought for the belt. Dustin Ortiz gets this ultimatum call, so he gets released because he didn't take it. And no one could beat Dustin Ortiz at the time. He only lost to Joseph Benavidez. No one could beat Joseph Benavidez at the time besides Figueiredo. And then, there was a lot of different things that just did not work out well. So I believe a lot of the better guys got released. You look at Sergio Pettis. Sergio Pettis
Yeah.
beat Brandon Moreno, and now Sergio Pettis is the bantamweight champion, defending soon for Bellator. And look at all the high level guys he's fought. So when it comes to that, it does make me a little bit butthurt that a lot of these guys are receiving fame. But hey, man, good for them. I'm not mad at them. I'm
Mhm.
more disappointed at the UFC because it's like, man, we did the same amount of work, if not even some of us more, and you didn't give us our fair share of credibility. And again, I'm happy for Brandon Moreno, Figueiredo, all these guys that stayed in the UFC. You look at Brandon Moreno; he took the ultimatum, and it was like, you know what, man, it's more money than I have anyways. Let's just take the risk. And if I get cut eventually, I get cut eventually. But if I don't, then let's just keep on fighting. Look at him; he became champion. You look at Pantoja; that guy was working Uber for, I believe, 11 straight fights until
Mhm.
finally he got co-main event and finally a main event. So yeah, these guys are ranked and these guys are winning belts and have more opportunities for sponsorships, which I'm happy for them for getting that. But it's like you're still, in a sense, being semi mistreated with the money you get until you become the next Conor McGregor, until you become the next champion. So it's a very big, complicated thing. But I'm happy for them, but I'm definitely a lot more happy than where I'm at now.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned there you had a 4-fight contract. Is there a feeling that you wish you were allowed to move up to bantamweight because you have kind of bounced between two divisions for your last two fights? Would you wish that they just let you move up rather than cutting you?
Well, what's funny is when I talked to them, I asked, "Hey, could I go to bantamweight?" And they just weren't interested at all. They're like, "No, no, we don't want you." And I'm assuming that's just because of the truth that I talked. People call it smack talk. Well, it's not
Mm-hmm.
smack talk if it's truthful. It's like, hey, man, if you did me wrong, I'm putting it out there. Don't look at it bad because you did me bad and I put it out there. That's not my fault. I'm just speaking the truth. So they weren't interested in me going up to bantamweight, nor were they ever interested in re-signing me later. So for me, I believe I am blacklisted in the UFC. It doesn't really matter to me. I get paid well, I do well. And my goal, inevitably, for any promotion in the world, is to do so good to do so well in my career that other promotions, not just Brave, want me. They want to keep me. They want me to be the staple of this and that. So whether it's UFC, Bellator, PFL, Brave, other promotions, like I want people to go, hey, Shorty Torres can bring in not just great entertaining fights, but numbers and this and that, and it makes sense to sign him. So that's what I want. No matter what he says, he's going to bring people in.
Yeah, so also you were mentioning Sergio Pettis earlier. Would there be a fight like that would you would love to have? Just in a sense to just annoy the UFC and be like, these are two big stars that you basically threw away and say weren't even useful now. You could be in a super fight being champion and champion.
Well, it's funny because I'm good friends with Sergio Pettis, Patchy Mix, all the
Mm-hmm.
guys that were in that Bellator bantamweight tournament, and I've trained all those guys. And I would love to fight every one of those guys just because I know how high level they are, whether they're in the UFC, whether they're in different promotions like myself, Brave, or Bellator solely, like Patchy Mix, and all these other people. But for me, I just want to fight the best in the world. And I expected both Sergio Pettis and I expected to fight each other one day. Well, actually, I just trained with him last week. We both expected to fight each other one day. Patchy Mix and I, even though we're training later today, we expect to fight each other one day. That's an honor because we know how high level we are. That if we do have to fight each other, it's one of those like you're both at the top of the mountain. You have no choice but to do this. Obviously, it's only business, it's nothing personal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you win, you buy the food after. But if the fact is, that's just part of the sport. It's not like we're playing football or different sports where we play every other day or every weekend, and we can get back to win or lose. This, yeah, we take a beating. Yeah, it might sometimes take a hit in our livelihood, but it's nothing personal. It's solely business. And if we fight each other, hopefully it's for a lot of money, and win or lose, it betters us in our lives. So if I fight Sergio Pettis one day, awesome. If I fight Patchy, awesome. If I fight Kyoji Horiguchi, awesome. It's just part of the process. With the UFC cutting all the guys, the crazy thing with the UFC is if they say one person is good, doesn't matter how their performance is. If Dana White gets on the microphone and the UFC starts promoting the hell out of someone, everyone, the normal fan, the guys who go to the bars and watch the fights, they 100% believe it. Like propaganda. Like, oh, hey,
Mhm.
okay, this guy's great, this, that. It's like, all right, cool. So if they say I suck, no matter how many accolades I have, people will believe I suck. And if they say I have all these things and they promote it highly, then people are going to follow suit. So they can hire whoever they want, but until they fight me and I can prove my point, that's a whole different case. So for me, I'm just doing me. The UFC does what they do as well.
Mhm. But when you did join Brave, did you kind of make it a mission of yours to fight top guys straight away and not like fight essentially what people would say is journeyman? Because you went in and then made your debut against Amir Albazi, who is now up there as one of the best flyweights in the world.
Yeah, for me, I get paid very well with Brave, and so I kind of understand. And no, and I never want an easy fight. I never want to go into a
Mhm.
training camp going like, I'm gonna beat this guy. I don't need to train as hard. This that. I want to be scared of every single opponent. My first fight, I'm 8-1, and I'm fighting 11-0 Amir Albazi. That's not known at the time, but I know everyone overseas is very good. Just they don't have the publicity like us Americans or even some of the Europeans have. So Amir Abazi coming in, I'm fighting in Jordan, a Middle Eastern territory, which he's, from Iraq. I'm like, okay, like he's gonna have obviously the popularity of the people behind him, this and that. And I win unanimous decision, and then now you see him, and I still train with him now. I actually might be
Mhm.
training with him in an hour. He is now, I believe, number two behind Brandon Royval for the title shot.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I'm happy for you. Yeah, I'm a little butthurt where you get treated better, you get this, you get that. But hey, like, what am I? I'm more just offended at the UFC. I'm not mad at you. It's
Mhm.
like, dude, good for you. You're number two in the world. Honestly, I hope you win the belt because if you win the belt, you technically help both of us. The only person to beat you is me, so that makes me look really good. And the other thing is, you have the belt, so hopefully, my loss helped you get to that point. So it's like, oh man, Shorty beat me in this, 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 this. Now, hopefully, now it doesn't happen to me anymore against whoever I fight next. Maybe if I fight someone like Shorty Torres, or even if I fight Shorty Torres again, I can beat him now from the lessons he taught me in that fight. So it's like, man, I'm happy for him, and I hope my brother makes it to the top and wins that belt. And again, it also helps me look better because it's like I'm the only person to beat him, and it also shows the UFC like, oh man, you cut a guy that has beat some of your top guys before. So again, it is what it is, but it's a brotherhood. Again, it's nothing personal to sport.
Mhm. So obviously after you had a few fights in Brave, you moved up to 135. Was the weight cuts getting harder at 125 as the fights progressed?
Yeah, the weight cuts were getting very, very bad to where I was becoming unhappy, unmotivated, and that's also one of the reasons why I lost my only fight that I lost against Alex Perez because it was back-to-back weight cuts, very short notice, to where I was becoming very unhealthy and given ultimatums from the UFC. So I kind of had no choice but to take the fight. But I was now starting to get not just unmotivated, but injured. Even if I was motivated, like my last fight that I was trying to drop down to 125 or 57 kg, I was going to fight Ali Bagutinov in Rostov, Russia. I was training in Dagestan. Everything was great. But then I'm now slowly, my body's like breaking down. It's tearing apart because I can't stay healthy. I'm not eating as well. I'm not eating as much. I'm doing this, doing that. And given I probably, or let me rephrase, I definitely could have done it better to certain aspects looking at it in hindsight now. But it's like, no matter what, I wasn't going to compete at my best. And I also wasn't going to be myself in there. So, with my only loss, which taught me a lot because my manager always makes fun of me. He goes, dude, before you went in the fight, you're like, all right, let's just get this over and done with it. And then after the fight, he looked at me, he's like, what's wrong? I was like, I just don't want to be in there. I just want to go home. And like that was just like that blank face type of thing. It wasn't myself. So I lost in my worst. So I one didn't want to do that again. And then two, I'm now my knees are falling apart. My ligaments are being torn, all that stuff. So it's like, you know what, man, let's bump up. I might be a little bit smaller, but I'll be a lot healthier. I'll be a lot happier. I can live a little bit more of an average life and enjoy myself a little bit more as well with friends and just family and social life, and then also be able to compete at my best. And if I lose, worst is the worst. Hey man, you are the better, warrior today, and you got me compared to losing my worst and always saying woulda, shoulda, coulda, and have an excuse at the back end.
Mhm. And something you were mentioning earlier about the UFC, how they can pick a person and be like, oh, isn't this person great? And then if they lose, they're kind of forgotten about. Do you think champions outside of the UFC don't get anywhere near enough attention as like a champ in the UFC or even the top 5 guy in the UFC?
I'm not using myself as an example because I know how good I am. It just depends
Mm-hmm.
on the people I fought, depends on the promotions and how the ranking system works. But I'm going to use Patchy Mix as an example. I've trained with a ton of people, and I'm a nomad. I go to different gyms and have a great time. And Patchy Mix is one of, if not at least top three best bantamweights in the world that I've trained with and gone hard with, like legit fights. Him and I have scrapped. I've trained with Sergio Pettis. I've trained with TJ Dillashaw. I've trained with John Lineker. I've trained with all these high level guys, and there's so many more I'm not naming, and all the guys in that Bellator bantamweight tournament. Patchy Mix is one of the scariest guys I've gone with, and you look at any ranking system, and most of the time he's not even in the top 10. It's most of the UFC guys. But that's just because people automatically put, if you're in the UFC, you're in the Premier League. That's not the case. You look at a lot of the guys that went from Bellator into the UFC, they became champions. You look at a lot of the guys that went from UFC to PFL or UFC to Bellator, or UFC to whatever promotion,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't make it to a championship fight because they're just not the same person, or you look at the level of competition. So myself, Sergio, and maybe a handful more guys, Jared Brooks, John Lineker, are the only ones, and Demetrius Johnson are the only ones that really claim belts, but we were the top of the top and we all got released.
And one thing I was wondering is you have your Mexican heritage, obviously, you're very proud of. Does it annoy you then that the UFC is now making this Mexican Independence Day a big event every year and it's going to be all the best Mexican fighters, quote unquote, on the same card? Would you just, and like the atmosphere they bring, how badly would you want to be on a card like that, regardless of if it's UFC or not?
Um, I mean, I'd love to. I had the extreme honor because I'm Mexican, Puerto Rican. Obviously, I'm
Mm-hmm.
American as well, born in the
Yeah.
States. And I fought in Bogota, Colombia for the Pan American Games, for Brave, and for the IMMAF. So being able to fight in front of, my Latino fans and obviously being American as well, like I am a Pan American athlete. So that was an extreme honor and to win the belt, do this. But to be highlighted, especially if people don't know. I mean, you obviously know you from being from Ireland. Like you go to an event and it's an Irish
Mm-hmm.
fighter, man, you guys go wild. It's the same thing with Mexican fighters. But it's like, oh my gosh, this is even if they don't like you, you're Mexican, yeah. Like it's just one of those things. So for us, I would love to fight on any type of Mexican card, um, especially with Brandon Moreno, Alexa Grasso, all these high level Mexican fighters because I'm Mexican as well. Just to be able to be on the same card and be highlighted as one of them would be awesome. Whether it's in the UFC, whether it's for Brave, whether it's forever. I think for me, fighting since I'm Mexican Puerto Rican, if I can fight in Puerto Rico, amazing. If I can fight in Mexico, amazing. If I can fight in the States again, because I haven't done that since 2018, amazing. As long as I can fight in front of my people for a big promotion and be promoted well and hopefully be main event, like Star Attraction, that would be an honor to me. So hopefully one day. But my biggest thing would be to fight in Chicago at where the Bulls play the United Center. That is my home. I have Mexican Puerto Rican guys there too, and just my people in general would be a phenomenal thing. So hopefully one day in Mexico, one day in Puerto Rico, but definitely one day in Chicago is my dream.
Yeah, obviously, as you mentioned Chicago there, you have a charity called Team Shorty Foundation. How important is that and the aspect of giving back to your community? Because you said the bio of the pages that the gym saved your life, and obviously you want people to stay off the streets and hope that they can also change their lives.
The gym has really changed my life. My dad was a gang leader. I was slowly
Mm.
kind of following suit. My brother kind of slowly did as well. So for me, I they wanted to keep me out of it, so they put me in the gym. And when I was put in the gym, I was put in front of positive male role models, even if they were other, former gang members. They were out of the neighborhood, out of the streets, and in the gym. And veterans going, "Hey, man, I went left, you should go right. You should do this because I don't want you to make the same mistake. You're younger, you have a lot more time, a lot more opportunity. You know, they were the reason why I went to college. They were the reason why I graduated. They were the reason why I went to the IMMAF twice, you know, and won twice and made a lot of decisions in my life. So for me, I was put in a position to be put in front of a lot of positive role models. If I didn't have that, I either would be in prison or I wouldn't be alive. And that's more than likely a guarantee, or be doing a lot of hood rat stuff with my friends all the time, doing the same thing over and over and over again. So it's like that changed, if not even saved my life. So what if, and I've seen many talented people, and I'm sure you've done the same when you were in school, and you're like, where are you now? Wow, you're doing the same thing from when we graduated school. I thought you would do this. I thought you would do that. A lot of people don't have those opportunities. And I believe, especially as an athlete, let's take advantage of it. So for me, I help all the money from every fight I get that I have. I think I believe, how much do I donate? I believe I donate 10% of my, I believe it's about 10 or 8% of my paycheck to my foundation, and then people can donate. A lot of my t-shirt sales, actually all of my t-shirt sales, that 100% of the proceeds go to my foundation to help keep kids, teens, and young adults inside the gym and off the streets. And it's not just in Chicago, it's worldwide. So, and I don't sponsor good athletes. I sponsor good people that just so happen to be good athletes. If I see people, and it might be a little biased, but if I see people inside the gym giving back and doing this, it's my way of paying it forward. Like, oh man, you've been teaching kids for free or doing this to help, and this is like, dude, here, let me sponsor you. Here, you need a free gym membership for the year? Let me sponsor that. Oh, you have a fight coming up? Let me show you how to promote and find other sponsors, not just myself, but I'm sponsoring you. This is your, you know, your kickstart for maybe your pro career or your amateur career. I sponsored a quick story. I sponsored a kid in Peru from a friend's recommendation. He's never fought in a big card before, and he had a couple amateur fights with me, a couple pro fights with me, and then Brave was going to Colombia. I was like, hey, Peru's right next to Colombia. Let me sponsor him and get him on the card. And I told Brave, I want him on the card. I need him on the card. He comes, he's on the card. He stays with me 2 weeks ahead of time in Bogota, Colombia. I go, I will pay for your flight. I'll pay for your hotel. You'll stay with me. You'll train like a champion because I'm going to be a future champ. I'm going to win this belt, and you'll do everything I do. He listened down to a T, like if I was his big brother. And I go in there. He goes to fight, and I'm his corner. And he got dropped in the first round, comes back second round, ends up dropping the guy, and then I believe ends up choking him out. And he won. And I almost teared up because I'm like, yo, this kid's like my little brother. But I remember even before that, I took him to, after Wayne's, I took him to dinner, and I paid for my team. It's all 10 people. But without Colombia, it's not as expensive. So I'm like, yeah, you know, guys, order whatever you want, you know? So currency was very different. I was very happy. And 10 people eat, and he's looking at the menu, and he's like, I don't know what to order because everything looks so expensive. I was like, hey, man, I'm taking care of you. Like, it's okay. Please order whatever you want. Like, I'm not doing it in a bougie way. Just order. I appreciate the respect, but please order whatever you want. And I was like, you know what? Let's do a family thing. I ordered a bunch of food so everyone could just pick apart the stuff on the table. And he looks at the table and he goes, I've never seen so much stuff. I've never seen so much food in my life, because he's from like the forest part of Peru. Like, he's from a very, very small town. And like, he lives in a concrete house, like very, very different. And so he eats, he enjoys it. And I go, I just want to let you know, I've been in your position where I've hung out with TJ Dillashaw, I've hung out with John Dodson, Cerrone, all these people that obviously have money now and have been champions before, been at the highest of their sport, and they've taken care of everyone. And I remember looking at it going, I hope I can do this one day. Because I know if people ask me for this now, I 100% want to be able to do it. And look at that, years later, I'm paying for 10 people to have all this stuff and enjoy it. I'm paying for this kid to come in and fly and train and all this stuff for free. And he's making money, and he won. And now hopefully Brave signs up for another fight. Like, awesome. And so it gives him hope and goals to hopefully be able to do that for other people one day. And hopefully the people I sponsor eventually sponsor other people, because athletes used to sponsor me. And if it weren't for those athletes sponsoring me, like Joshua Sampo or the Green Power Ranger, Jason David Frank, Tommy Oliver, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So I'm also paying it forward. So hopefully these guys do the same thing, and it just keeps on going full circle. So my foundation does a lot, man.
That was a great story. I think that's a great way to end it. So thank you again for coming on, and best of luck in your next fight that I hear you'll be announcing soon.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks.